My parents got divorced when I was young. We had what's called the silver spoon with my dad, the Harleys, the boats, the Corvettes. My dad didn't pay child support to my mom. When I lived with my mom, 90% of the time, we didn't have any money. In fact, we could hardly afford a car. Without my grandma, we wouldn't have a car. But I'm grateful for it because I saw both sides of wealth. If you don't have it, or if you're not being generous and open with it, right? And or when the world is built upon the wealth, what it can do to your character and your legacy for the family when it gets distracted. And saying, okay, that's what I'm not going to do. Part of humility is being willing to look and see what's happening in the world, and then saying, okay, Lord, please give me the wisdom and the obedience to not do what's foolish and or what's harmful to others, right? Or myself. I believe I've been given certain gifts, and these gifts have been given to be blessing and help to others. And so the belief that God's giving me these certain gifts, that I have the confidence it's not in me that's so special, it's Him that's so special, right?
Imagine having direct access to someone who's navigated life's toughest terrains and come out stronger. Someone who's been there, done that, and can guide you with empathy, experience, and honesty. This isn't just advice. It's a lifeline, a strategy session, a chance to learn from my journey so you can accelerate yours. Without the ability to be self-aware and introspective, the ability for you to get to where you want to go, nearly impossible. Hey everybody, welcome back to the David Guttman podcast. Actually doing this in St. Augustine, Florida, thanks to my new friend, Brett Swarts. So really excited to talk to Brett, best-selling author, real estate and capital gains tax planning guru, entrepreneur, and podcaster. Did I cover it all?
David, I think so. You know, dad, married, you know,
well, five kids,
basketball,
just, 5 kids. Not just dad, 5 kids.
We've done our part, yeah.
Well, so I was listening to a bunch of your content in preparation for our conversation today, and being someone, and we're definitely going to get into the real estate stuff for sure because I've got questions there too. But being a crypto guy for the last 10 years, I'd love to hear about some of the tax planning strategies, capital gains tax planning strategies around crypto. So let's say you've got someone who's got $8, $10, $15 million, in crypto appreciation. What's the best way without them having to move to Puerto Rico for them to be able to get out relatively unscathed?
Yeah. So the first thing is getting really clear about what you're doing with your investments. And so whether it be crypto, business, real estate, whatever you're in, like get really clear on what is it you're trying to achieve with that before we make any moves, any kind of tax moves or selling anything. And so I always start with what's called the truly passive income number. Right. And I feel like, and I believe that it's kind of like the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You've ever read the Purple Book, right? Everyone wants to get to that fourth quadrant. But I feel like most people get stuck in those other three quadrants, right? And so how do you get to that fourth quadrant? Well, you unlock what's called truly passive income. And some people it's 10, 20, 30, 50,000 per month, 60, 70, and whatever it is, your number, you figure out what that number is, and then we reverse engineer of what would it take to exit something and harvest without having to pay the tax, invest, and live off of the cash flow that's passive. Now, it has to be a couple things. It needs to be passive, truly passive. That means no shoes, no shirt, no problem. You're Kenny Chesney David sitting on the Miami beach, playing your guitar, you get your hat on, you get your glasses on, and you don't have to think about the income showing up. You don't have to trade in your time, any of your talent, any of your treasure. I mean, it's just consistent, it's durable. You know the essence of the investment. So you don't have to, wake up at night thinking about, well, is this thing going to work? Is this cash flow going to show up? Like it's just consistent and it's durable, okay? And it's truly passive. That means you don't have to do anything for it. And then that's it. That frees you to be able to give more or all of it away after that because you know that it's just going to show up, right? So that's number one. Now, so number two, then we actually can get tactical. We can figure out, all right, well, what is that number? Let's just say it's 50,000 per month. And let's say you have 10 million of Bitcoin. And let's say you live in tax reform in New York or New Jersey. You're going to pay 20% federal. And then the state can be another 10 to 13, maybe up to 15, just kind of depends. So you're looking at, let's just call it a 30% total. So you have 7 versus 10. We get the practical part. We're going to build a plan that enables you to defer that tax. And so we can dive into those technical pieces, but the long story is we're going to get, let's say 10 instead of having 7. And then we're going to be able to engineer that in a way that's very efficient for income tax. And obviously it's deferring the capital gains tax. Now you'll pay tax as you receive payments, but those are the main concepts that I want to start with.
So then in your example, that $3 million in taxes I didn't pay right up front, I then pay that at death or
well if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it make a sound, does it make a sound, right?
Right.
So most of our clients aren't dipping into the principal. And this is the beauty, right? On the first 10 million for a married couple in any given calendar year, you can defer up to 10 million with a 0% interest charge from the government. Okay. So if I were to give you 3 million at 0% interest, and I said, David, all you need to do is invest into other things and don't touch that 3 million. Now in this scenario, it's the 10 million, right? Including the including the 3. As long as you invest into your own business ventures or real estate or crypto or Bitcoin or whatever you want to invest it in, okay, this trust, and you just live off the interest that it accrues and pays you, and I'll give you a 0% interest on that 3 million. When would you pay that 3 million back?
Never.
Never, right? And so that's the beauty. You can continue the tax deferral indefinitely in 10-year increments, pass it to kids, and they can keep it going indefinitely.
Oh, so okay, so it's not even on upon your death because you're done in some kind of trust?
Correct. I mean, kids step into your shoes and they can continue the deferral. So yeah, some people want to look at like a step up basis, which is what if you maintain equity and ownership in something. In this scenario, you become the lender is how this thing works. You've sold your 10 million to the trust and the trust sold it for 10 million to the market, and it did a simultaneous close, and the trust issued you a promissory note. And that's how you can defer. So that's the mechanism. It's called an installment sale method of reporting taxes.
Got it. Now, I do want to get into some of the real estate stuff, but if you don't mind just taking a half a step back with me, I'd love to know kind of, just a little bit about your background and, growing up, siblings, what your folks did. Like, how did you get into the field you're in? How did you decide you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Maybe just give me the thumbnail there.
Yeah, so growing up in the Bay Area, California, building houses with my parents, I fell in love with real estate, the sticks and bricks, all of it. And I love working hard with my dad and my brother and my mom, and things were going great for a long time. And this is, I was born in '83. Okay, the year that you did wrestling.
Wrestling camp,
And so, this is the year before we knew, like before the internet, and then we knew kind of after we're kind of that hybrid generation of technology. My brother was a first graduate at college. I was a second. So on each side of the family. So that was a big step for us. So mom and dad said, we want you to go to college and work more with the brain, not just with the muscles, right? And so that's what we did. We both went to college. He graduated first. He went to Marcus and Millichap, and then I kind of followed a little bit in his footsteps there. I took an internship and I started to learn about real estate and investing. It was kind of more of a hybrid. It's 100% commission, no benefits. And you're cold calling to try to win listings, to sell to get a big commission. So that's kind of the short version of my path to business and my path to learn about capital gains tax. The 2008 crash was the big piece of this that really changed the game for a lot of us, because we found out that the 1031 exchange isn't always your friend. So we went through some bumps and bruises. My wife and I at the time had a first baby on the way. So I remember, went to the bank account and it was zero, right? We're like, oh no, we got to move with my brother into a small condo. We wanted to keep her home full time, so she wasn't working. So then I started working at Cheesecake Factory nights and weekends.
Wow. And
basketball tournaments nights and weekends. So I worked about 70-hour weeks for about 2 years doing this Marcus and Millichap by day and these side hustles at night. And it did a couple things for us. Number one, clarify that we really want it. You get really clear on what you want when things are at zero, right? Two, I learned a lot, right? It built that grit and that resilience inside of that marketplace, that if I can succeed and make it through this, I can kind of make it through anything. And so after that 2-year period, and during that 2-year period, we learned about what we're going to talk about today, some capital gains tax deferral, and really learning about ways in which we can unlock what's called truly passive income, like we talked about, and also diversification without having to suffer the consequences of not selling and or overpaying for properties. And so it's connecting what I call a cash flow mindset, tax flow mindset, and a debt flow mindset. And when you can connect all three with a mechanism that gives you leverage over time, that's where everything transforms. But if you only have one, two, or you only have one of those or two of those, it's like it almost doesn't unlock it all the way. And this is kind of the things that we can talk about today.
No, that's fantastic. So maybe talk a little bit about humility, because I got to believe going from having to work nights at the Cheesecake Factory and all of that to where you are now. I mean, that's quite a journey of a relatively short period of time. But I gotta believe, and just from my own personal experiences, getting kicked in the teeth really does give you, at least for me, it gave me a level of humility that I have retained. And the other thing I would say is I appreciate everything I have so much more now than I did before. I don't think I was unappreciative, but not nearly as appreciative. But I'm curious about your journey.
Yeah. So backing up again, my parents got divorced when I was young, 8 or 9. And so we had what's called the silver spoon with my dad, the Harleys, the boats, the Corvettes, the trips, all of that. And tons of cash and money and all of that. And the parents got divorced and my dad didn't pay child support on my mom. So I went to my mom, when I lived with my mom 90% of the time, we didn't have any money. In fact, we could hardly afford a car. Without my grandma, we wouldn't have a car, but I'm grateful for it because I saw both sides of wealth, and I saw both sides of what wealth can do if you don't have it, or if you're not being generous and open with it, right? And or when the world is built upon the wealth, what it can do to your character and your legacy for the family when it gets distracted, right? So I had the privilege of seeing this at a young age and experiencing it and saying, okay, that's what I'm not going to do. So I think part of humility is being willing to look and see what's happening in the world, right? And then saying, okay, Lord, please give me the wisdom and the obedience to not do what's foolish and or what's harmful to others, right? Or myself. I think that's a piece of it for sure. I think the other piece of humility is having confidence in the gifts you've been given. So I believe I've been given certain gifts, and these gifts have been given to be blessing and help to others. And so the belief that God's giving me these certain gifts, that I have the confidence, it's not in me that's so special, it's Him that's so special, right? But He's gifted me with these things. One of them is the gift of forgiveness, right? At an age of, I was telling you before the show, 12 to 14, I started asking questions. And, my mom was always like, pray for your dad. Mom was a believer, still a believer. My dad was still praying for him. And I remember asking questions like, Mom, Dad, what happened? Like, what happened to the divorce? Like, you start figuring out about 12 to 14, like, my parents aren't married. Like, you asking questions, and you start to find out the real story. You're like, oh my gosh, like these are things that shouldn't have happened, and it happened in the wrong way. And so the anger starts to build, right? And I never remember like asking my mom and just the anger. And I remember just, you could it was like something shifted in me. It's almost like I think of like Adam and Eve, they take a bite of that apple and all of a sudden they're seeing the other side of like good and evil, right? I could feel like that rage and that anger like building inside of me. And because I kind of could see what actually had happened. And I remember my mom saying, pray for your dad. He's not a believer, and sin is passed through generations. And who knows the sin that was passed through your dad and could have been passed to you, and you still can if the Lord's not in your life. And so I remember praying and not necessarily like wanting it necessarily, but I remember just listening to my mom and saying, okay, I'll pray and I'll have some faith. And it's like a mustard seed of faith. The Lord like released that anger from me. I can't explain it, but except for I believe He gave me the gift of forgiveness to forgive my dad at that age and not sever that relationship, because I was ready to sever it, right? I was ready to just, disown and push him away. Instead, I love my dad and we have a, great relationship. And more so, it's like the poison didn't poison me. So I'm able to be humble in the sense that I have the Lord's gift of forgiveness. So I think that's a big piece. I think where humility gets cut off from the knees, especially at young ages, especially if fathers aren't there, especially if that anger and the resentment builds and you don't have great coaches and youth pastors. By the way, the Lord always provided great coaches, great youth pastors. My grandma was like a second mom and dad. She was from the Depression days, right? She's turning 97 years old. Oh. She raised 5 kids, lost 1 kid to brain cancer at 10 years old. I worked 14-hour days for General Motors on the assembly line. And she was like a mom and a dad to me. My mom was this loving, believing, praying warrior for me and my brother. She would just pour into us, right? She never remarried. She just poured into my brother and I. So I had so many gifts and blessings of coaches, of my mom, of my grandma, older brothers and cousins. So God always provided that for me too, right? So I would say humility is being able to not be overrun by certain big sins that could just overtake you. And then recognizing that God's giving us these gifts, and then can we then believe what He's instilled in us? Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I give your mom a lot of credit. I'm sure you do too, for being able to have such grace. Because ultimately, I know I got divorced from my first wife when my daughter was very young, and I not only did I did I and do I try to never say anything bad about her mom, but whenever possible, if I can find anything nice to say,
Yeah.
I try to do so. It's just a better way to travel.
You're right. And pray for her, right? Pray for her, right? Like I pray for my dad. And
Right.
even if I'm going through conflict, even if you don't feel like praying, pray like Jesus says to pray for your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, pray for pray for them and want what's best for them, even if it's, on the earthly nature is like everything in me wants to either fight or flight, right? And react and Jesus says to pray. And really that helps us to release what otherwise that lack of forgiveness can harden our hearts, right?
Right.
So that's what's helped me just through my whole life. And so the beauty is my mom modeled that. So you're right. She's the hero of my life. She modeled that. In fact, she modeled it from when like the divorce was about 6 to 7. When did I really ask questions? About 12, 13.
Right.
So there was 6 years of this. And so I didn't know what she was doing or not doing. I just know that she wasn't harboring that resentment and hate.
Right.
And then I asked questions and I could see the other side. And then she said, Brett, this is what I've done. And I believe this is the Lord calls us to do. I want you to do that. And so it was just naturally that gift of faith. I believe the Lord gave her the gift of forgiveness, that she could forgive. Now, does it mean that she's not still hurt and she's not still, still has pain from it? No, we're not saying that. It's just, it's not going to dominate life, right? The Lord dominates the life, right? Forgiveness. This other part of it is a place to grow, a place to be faithful in, right? It says, count it pure joy whenever we face trials of many kinds. Like that's the gift. It's like, okay, what I'm going through right now is really hard. It's really painful. And I'm going to count it pure joy. I'm going to have faith that I can grow through this, strengthen my character. So what? I can be a better leader for my family, for my community, for my team, make a bigger impact. It's a gift. It's a gift, every single trial.
So, have you had faith your whole life? It sounds like your mom clearly has, but is that something that and have you always been steadfast, or did you have, you were in, you were out, you were back in, or how was
good
that
question. So I had a deep faith or a young, new faith from 6 or 7. I remember asking my mom and my grandma, like, hey, I would like to say the prayer and accept Jesus into my heart. And, I believe. And so that's just always been in my life. I remember, seeing that dad wasn't a believer and mom was, and, seeing the different worldviews. I remember going to a youth church camp in about 7th grade, and I call it Jesus was my savior at 6 or 7. He became my Lord at 13, 14, right around that. All that time I was asking all those questions, and then I matured in my faith when I went to college and had a chance to I remember the Lord saying, "Don't date anybody for a year." Okay. Women, if there was a sin from my father and all the thing, it would women, right? For sure, right? It's like don't date anyone for a year. Just focus on education, basketball, and me. And I did it for about a year, and it was freeing. And I remember also the chance to strengthen and ask questions on my faith. Like, do I believe this because my mom just believes it, or do I believe it because I believe it? And so, but I remember every time I asked the questions, the Lord always said, "Ask the questions," and I would grow in my faith and grow in my faith and grow in my faith. So it's like kind of like wrestling. You talk about wrestling, you growing up, right? I wouldn't just lay down. I'd get in there, right? What are those tough questions, those doubts, or those things, right? And so the Lord blessed that and just grew in my faith. And so I went on to study Bible and theology in college and get a degree in that, and then in business, and then a minor in counseling psychology and such. But yeah, the faith has just grown. And then you get married and you really get mature. You get kids and you really get mature. Like it starts you move from boy to man. So these are definitely stages of the life.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, once I had a daughter, I was like, okay, it's a whole different level.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and again, I could be thinking about this totally wrong, but so your dad sounds like he was very financially successful, and your mom, but didn't have faith, didn't have God in his life. Your mom, the exact opposite. It would be relatively easy, I would think, to assign a negative value to being successful. And so you're a successful guy yourself, books, podcasts, your main business. How do you navigate that and not feel that way?
It's a great question. So I think it starts with the art of forgiveness, right? Or the gift of forgiveness. And it allows you to see all of the great, amazing things that my dad was and is. Like extremely hard worker. They call him the beaver. He was like the hardest worker. We would wake up at 5 a.m. He'd get my brother and I up. We'd jump in the Ford F-150 with the blue stripes on the side with the rack on the back. You get in there and you sit on the seats, and the dust would kind of pop up from all the nails and all of the dust. And we would drive to McDonald's. We'd pick up a little hash brown and a sausage McMuffin, and we'd be on the job site by 5:30, and we'd work straight till 4 o'clock. Dad
At
had
what
us
age?
moving bricks. Oh yeah, this is every summer, probably starting from 8 or 9 all the way through high school.
Damn.
Yeah,
Okay.
up until we got really serious in sports. So probably right as high school was starting, we had to stay for football camp or different things. But yeah, I mean, we would go and he'd have us do what he's doing, and hammering nails, putting up drywall, running wires, climbing scaffolding, all this drilling stuff. So he modeled hard work. My dad is a action person, not a big talker, right? Which this is what I learned. And he worked very, very hard, but then he also knew when to go work out and have fun. We would go to club sport. He played racquetball. We played racquetball. We would work out. We'd play basketball. He wouldn't play basketball. Brother and I would play basketball. He was more on the racquetball. We'd go on these camping trips, and we would kneeboard and wakeboard. And he built out this whole place. We call it the island. It was in the middle of it's kind of like the Stockton area, Central Valley, Central California, where it's literally an island in between. It's called like two rivers, but it's man-made. But we built these little campsites there, and we tore out bamboo and we did that for years. Right, every Thursday at about 5 or 6 o'clock we get there, and we stay all the way till Sunday, and we go back and do it all over again. And anyway, so these are all the core memories of enjoying life, being very successful, having good relationships with friends that get fun. We'd hike Mission Peak together. So my dad was he would drive 2-3 hours to come see our football games and basketball games. He'd drive back, and I mean so there was so many good things of my dad. So, but part of why I think I experienced that harvest of that is because my heart wasn't hard for him. It wasn't hard and callous. It was open to the good things. So success was never a thing that was afraid of, or it was always just going to be. Yeah,
That's a wonderful level of maturity, even at such a young age. I think it's interesting. My parents split when I was a freshman in college, but I had practically been begging them to get divorced since I was in middle school. They fought all the time, and I just hated the fighting. But what I thought was interesting for me was, it sounds like with your parents it was similar. My parents couldn't have been more different. My dad was a very analytical, degree in mathematics and physics, entrepreneur. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, then a social worker. So couldn't be more different characteristics. And so what I found myself doing, and just from what little I know of you already, it sounds like maybe you did the same, which is I looked at both of my parents and I said, well, here are things about my mom that I think are terrific. Better at communicating, better at making connection with other people, whatever it might be. Here are the things about my dad. He's super hardworking, super driven, very analytical. I like those things, and kind of constructed myself from what I felt was the best of both of them.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Lord gives us each individual gifts, and then he complements with other people too in our lives. My brother's a big part of that, 2 years older than me. He led the way on a lot of things, and he kind of paved the way on a lot of things. And I was the younger brother that got to absorb. I had older cousins, mostly all boys. There's 9 of us, right? I was one of the younger ones, so I got to see their mistakes and their successes in the same thing. Hey, I'm going to choose to do this and not do that, all right? And so even in sports, I ended up being the best basketball player in our family. Well, partly because I got to play against all the better competition growing up.
It was exactly so. In wrestling, it is universally true. They call them wrestling families, where there'll be 3 or 4 brothers.
Yeah.
The youngest brother is always the best wrestler, 100% of the time.
Correct.
My brother was a good wrestler. I was better just because of all the beatings he gave me. I absorbed some of the lessons through all the beatings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, so now how do you? So 2008 happens. Maybe let's pick up there and kind of where you got into this whole capital gains tax, minimization stuff that seems to be really been in the wind in your sails.
Yeah, after you see the pain and the devastation of that kind of crash, and for people who made and lost millions and millions of dollars, and it really goes to one key story, although there was multiple stories. A gentleman named Steve, and Steve's married, and he has the big house, and he's got about $50 million of multifamily properties. He's done multiple 1031 exchanges. He's hands-on, he's syndicating, he's building all this wealth.
Just so everyone understands, because
Yeah.
my audience won't have the background that yours does.
Yeah.
So a 1031 exchange is basically you have a property and then you're going to roll that in and to another property so you don't have to pay the taxes on it.
You got it. Yeah, you're going to sell one and you're going to buy a bigger one. It's a good way to think about it. As long as you sell it, and buy at least the bigger one, basically in equal greater debt, equal greater value, you keep deferring these taxes. You just keep rolling and compounding the wealth.
You get a step up in basis. Right?
Not until you die.
Oh,
it maintains a step up basis, but yeah, if you die, you can step up the full thing at the very end. Yeah. So Steve's doing this, and he's like on top of the world in a sense, right? And until he wasn't, right? And all of a sudden, we sat down with him in early 2007, and we said, hey, it might be a good time to sell. Like things are, probably at the peak, and he's like, well, I really can't. We're like, what do you mean, Steve? He's like, well, I have too much debt, and I've got such massive gains. I've been doing these refis, cash out refis. It's like kind of the way people say, just refi and you don't pay your tax. All the rich just refi and don't pay their tax. Well, to a certain extent, if you get so big where you don't have to take on too much leverage and you have plenty of liquidity to offset, and cash flow the debt. Well, but if you don't, when you're a certain, your whole thing can collapse, right?
I see where this is going.
Yeah. And so I literally watched it like live and in person, see the guy say no because he didn't have a strategy. And at the time, we didn't know about our strategy, right? We only knew about the 1031. So we're like, yeah, we don't blame it. He's like, so I have to overpay and take on too much debt. So fast forward, he loses everything. Now he has 2 young sons. Now watch how this all connects, right? 2 young sons. He not only loses the 50 million, divorced, loses the property. He's not spending time with his sons. Guess where I grew up? My brother and I, 2 years apart, right? My dad, who was in construction and real estate and all the things. So it was like a moment of like, reflection and like connection. I'm like, wow, like, what if there was a way, like not saying who knows all the stuff, the dynamics of the divorce, but what if there was a way, and I think money fights and money problems are the top reason people get divorced, right? What if there was a way where we could have set up a plan that got him out of debt, that diversified his wealth, that sold when he wanted to sell, that got him closer to his family, had more time back, right? Like basically debt-free plan for Dave Ramsey for your exit, truly passive income, which was we all want, Robert Kiyosaki, bottom corner. The ability to still be an entrepreneur, by the way. You don't have to be, you can still do your stuff. You just don't have to do it with, too much debt. You can do it for lower amounts. The ability to diversify and have liquidity, right? So you don't have to be just all in the real estate world. All of it was like, I learned about the strategy all of a sudden in 2000. I mean, that's what we would have done had we done it. So I learned about the strategy that where you can do that. You can do this with a different strategy. We call it the Netflix version of exit planning versus the old Blockbuster. Blockbuster is showing up, having to return it in 3 days, like the 1031, show up, have to buy it within 45, put it under contract or identify it. Our strategy, there's no timing restrictions. There's no like-kind replacement requirement. The old Blockbuster strategy, you have to equal or greater debt when you buy that property. Well, debt is your enemy when the market shifts, right? When interest rates go through the roof. We're seeing it again right now. Ours, you don't have to be in debt. The other thing is theirs, you can't diversify. You have to stay within real estate. Ours, we can get out of real estate. Now, I love real estate when it makes sense to own it. I like real estate debt when interest rates are higher and equity is lower. We're in a lot of debt right now. It's just doing great. So we want to go into debt, but also you can go into the stock market. You can go into Bitcoin. We had a client sell a $13 million asset in San Diego, buy Bitcoin at $40,000 a coin.
They're very happy now.
All tax deferred,
Right.
All tax deferred to this point, right? And we also diversified in other things. We just put all into Bitcoin, right? But that's the point. You can dollar cost average on ours. This other one, you can't dollar cost average. So you get the point, right? Blockbuster versus Netflix. And so what do you want? Netflix. We all want Netflix. So I thought, well, if we can build Netflix or capital gains tax exit plans, it gives people the flexibility like a Netflix, right? Where you can do it at any time. There's all the flexibility there. No like-kind replacement requirement, debt freedom, liquidity diversification. Then perhaps it could help families unlock freedom and multiply impact for themselves, to give more of themselves to their family, and to give more of their wealth away to MVPs. We call MVPs the most vulnerable people. And so that's the vision, how it all comes together. We have this 84 to 100 trillion that's transferred in the next 15 years. This is the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet that we know of.
I heard that from one of your podcasts and I was like blown away, like 84. First I thought you said billion, then I rewounded, like, no, he said trillion.
Yeah, and it's happening, right? So think about it, right? We've not known in the history of the world more wealth that's ever transferred in a 15-year period.
Right.
Okay. So it's mostly the baby boomers passing to the millennials. And 50% of the total net worth in America is high-end primary homes, businesses, private equity, and commercial real estate. Okay. So those three are illiquid assets that are highly appreciated and it's like sitting on, you know how Trump says like liquid gold under the surface of America, right? It's like liquid gold sitting there. So let's take 100 trillion, let's just cut it in half. Let's call 50 trillion. It's just sitting there. Well, we think it's blocked. We can't hit through the dirt to get the oil to flow because of capital gains tax. Most people are like, it's going to wait and die until I get the stepped up basis. No way I'm paying that tax. Oh, I don't want a 1031. Why do I want to go into more toilets, more trash, more liability, more rent control, more nonsense? I'm just going to hold on to my property that I kind of already know. So they don't do anything, and that 50 trillion just sits. Oh, I'm just going to stay in my primary home because, interest rates are too high. You can't blame them, right? And so, well, what if we could unlock that 50 trillion? Not only that, obviously defer all the capital gains tax, but then imagine if we take that 50 trillion and we put it into some cash flowing opportunities.
Right.
Diversify that wealth. All of that cash flow now that starts to pour in, guess what it can do? We can end the housing crisis. Guess what we can do? We could start massive amount of jobs in companies, right? To create more jobs, which does what? It actually creates more tax revenue for the U.S. government, which means what? We can start to pay down that, guess what? What 35, 36 trillion
No,
right
it's
now?
almost 40.
It's now 40, yeah. $40 trillion. So there's no way we're ever going to tax our way out of this.
Right.
We've got to unlock the capital. We got to get that compounding. Think of it like our truly passive income number. If I can get this compounding cash flow, or in this scenario, taxes that are being earned because our economy is so strong, we can start to pay down that 40 trillion. So we got 100 trillion or we got 40. Now, as this keeps growing, obviously it becomes more and more of a mess. So we have this 15-year window. So that's where we're at. We're in the battle of what we call the reverse Tea Party. 250 years ago, we fought for tax, for representation with fair taxes, right? Now,
what was it, 3% tax, I think?
Yeah, whatever it was, right? Americans have never been fond of paying tax, right? Well, although if there was accountability and transparency,
that's the problem. There's none. Yeah,
there's none. And we've seen this with waste, fraud, and abuse with Doge coming out. It's a train wreck, right? We can't trust them for anything right now, right? And that's the beauty of what we do is we keep the funds in the hands of the people. It ultimately does help the government because the more jobs that are created, more investments and more housing that's created, it helps to build the foundation of America, right? So that's what we do.
Well, so what about, if there's anything that's consistent about the tax code, it's inconsistency, and that's changing all the time. What's the probability that, this, because I remember on one of the podcasts of yours I was listening to, I think one of the people you had explained this to is, well, it sounds too good to be true. And then they finally were convinced it wasn't too good to be true. But what's the probability that the tax code changes in such a way that this won't be possible anymore?
Yeah, great question. So there's some common ones. Let's start with some common ones, like an IRA, 401k. People know what these are, very, very standard. They're all tax deferral mechanisms. You have 1031 exchange, which we briefly talked about. It's more commonly known. Ours is based upon IRC section 453, which is part of the tax code that allows for what's called an installment sale, right? Where David has a business, he wants to sell for $10 million, and there's a buyer who wants to give a $2 million down payment. You could carry paper for them and become the bank. And to the extent you carry $8 million of debt and let them pay you over time, you don't pay taxes immediately on that $8 million. You only pay on the 2 and any of the interest charges. So where does that come from? Like, why did the government allow that? Well, backing up to the 1920s and 30s, the Great Depression, we found that what happened? The banks seized up. And so like everything almost like fell apart, right? It did fall apart for a while until they can put it back together. Well, part of what they enacted are certain tax laws that allows David to sell his business and not incur tax if he hasn't received a payment. So if you're a business owner and you're 70 or 80,
I see.
You see this, right?
Yeah, I get it now.
And if you want to sell it and they can't afford, the bank won't get it.
I mean, they were talking crazy shit like, hey, maybe we should tax unrealized gains, which that's
well,
crazy.
the beauty is Trump did get elected, okay? Right. And those crazy other ideas did not get elected, right?
Thank God.
At least for the tax stuff, we could go each one by one, but to the end of the day, like ideas are going to work or they're not going to work. The crazy tax ideas about taxing unrealized gains, it's never going to work, right? It's never going to work.
I can't see how it could be workable.
No, so it's not even worth talking about, right? And if they potentially get elected, which I'm not seeing anytime soon.
Yeah.
So focusing back on this, so the economy, in the American economy, is essentially based, we believe, on at least one of these major tax strategies, such as the IRC 453, which allows a seller of a highly appreciated asset to take installments back over time. So we don't see it changing. We actually think the reason they also don't want it to change is because you actually lock in your gain at the time of sale. And our strategy You will sell at 10 million. You'll lock in your gain and tax of 4 million. There's no stepped up basis in this particular part of the strategy, right? So the government's like, okay, well, we will get paid eventually if they dip into 10. And if they don't, that's okay. It's the money's in the stock market. It's in Bitcoin. It's in real estate. It's in these different assets that are actually creating jobs, creating tax revenue. You see it?
Yeah, I do.
So they're actually the biggest winners here. So most people think, oh, this must be too good to be true because how are they winning? They're not paying tax. Well, we're deferring tax. Now I'm getting taxed on the fees that I make. You're getting taxed on the income you receive from the interest from the payment. The financial advisor managing, they're getting taxed. So there's plenty of taxes that are happening on the movement of money.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you, was it your idea? Was it you and a combination of other people's ideas? I mean, as I heard you explain it in one of the podcasts, like, man, that's really smart.
Yeah.
And I think I understood like 80% of it. But even the 80% I understood seemed really smart. Where'd you come up with it?
Yeah, look, I'm 41. The strategy's been around for about 30 years.
Oh, okay.
So that would have put me at 11.
So it wasn't you.
I wasn't me, yeah. So a tax attorney and a CPA created the structure about 30 years ago. He's a former Arthur Anderson CPA tax attorney. And so you meet somebody and you're like, wow, this person feels like a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk when it comes to this. He's under the radar. He's just doing the tax work. I'm more of the person out talking and educating and marketing and really kind of like the nurse that checks you in. Technically, I'm a trustee that helps to execute the management of the trust because it's not just the idea, it's not just the strategy, it's the execution of the strategy, of the application of the information, right? So that's our role. We're kind of like the offensive coordinator. We get everyone in the room. We get all the M&A attorneys, the real estate agents, whoever it is, depending on what they're exiting. And if it's Bitcoin, setting up the exchanges. We're the first to ever do it with Bitcoin. A client that bought Bitcoin at $50,000 was her investment. It went to $50 million in value. She was a maxis, right, as you call it. Never selling until she met us.
Right.
When she met us, we were able to build a plan that helped her not to move to Puerto Rico, defer the tax. She lived in California, worked for Google. We deferred the tax, and then she was able to invest it when we exited at 54,000 a coin into like a Khan Academy type of an online business that she was creating with her roommate.
Right.
So she's unlocking freedom and education for others. Well, guess what Bitcoin did? It went from 54 to about 68, 69, dropped to 15. Well, we got an exit price of 54. Now it took a couple years, whatever. Now it's back over 100. She held on to the rest of it. So her value is over $100 million with the Bitcoin. But guess what happened for these last couple of years? Like she didn't have to wait till 15 to 54. We were able to take some of those chips, diversify, live off some of the cash flow, as well as start a company, right? So really what we're talking about is time. So kind of back to your initial question in the beginning, like, well, Brett, if someone had 10 or $15 million of crypto, and well, what do you want? Well, we probably want some time freedom. So we want some cash flow freedom. We want some entrepreneurial freedom. Like pick your freedom, David. Then let's build a plan. Taxes is going to give us an extra 20 to 50% if we have a plan to defer it, or it's going to take it away. We're going to defer it. So that's really what we do. We're solving a Rubik's Cube. We're finding out what colors all line up for you. And then together we're working with you, sometimes your team, the tax attorney, and we're all turning this thing around until we say, David, does that look like a pretty good plan? You go, looks like a sweet plan. Let's go.
Well, so what's the amount of money that needs to be in play for the economics to make sense? Because I got to believe, like you said, because the accountants and the lawyers and your organization, like there's overhead there, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, it seems like, when you're talking about, 7 or 8 figures, like, so where's the break point of where it doesn't make sense below a certain dollar?
We found $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain per transaction is the minimum.
Okay.
Now, if you had two at 500,000 each that you can combine, you have one coin at 500,000 and this other, piece of real estate at 500,000, we can combine it into one trust, right? But we found as soon as you dip below those numbers, it really starts to diminish. The fees are about 1.5% for a setup fee and about 1.5 to 2% on a recurring fee on the net proceeds. So
net proceeds described as what?
Yeah. So let's say you had a $100 million business,
right,
and you had 30 million of debt. Well, the net proceeds are about 70, right?
I got it.
Right. Now on a 70 million, we'd get a little bit skinnier than 1.5 to 2, right? But on like a $10 million deal, we're about 1.5 to 2. Now we cash flow our fees, so we'll take the 10 and we'll typically earn double-digit returns on the money and net you 8 or 9 or 10% net of our fees. And so we look at your ROE and say, David, what is your ROE? And a lot of our clients are showing up with 3 to 5% ROE, return on equity, right? So we say, okay, well, what if we could double that net of fees? Would that be of value to you? And people are like, absolutely. And don't have to do the work, and I don't have the liability, and you also get some asset protection because the trust is another entity that really can't be hit by creditors.
Right.
So you look at these pieces, and again, and you go back to what matters the most to you right now for this exit. Where people get in trouble is they don't plan, they don't prepare, they don't set it up in time, and they run out of time, and their experts don't know. And the worst is they go back to their experts and they hear about this and they go, our expert's over here. Have you heard of it? I haven't heard of it. In fact, they get it confused with the Delaware Statutory Trust a lot, which is another form of a 1031 exchange. And so then all of a sudden they're like, well, I've got 30 days to close. And so either I'm going to trust Brett and his team that are experts, or do I have to not trust my experts over here that are experts? And it becomes the battles of the expert. I don't say battles. It's just, you can't expect the non-ACL brain surgeon family practitioner over here to understand what we do and give the blessing to do the surgery, if you will, right? Because this is a big exit.
Sure.
So that's part of what we love to. We like to deliver in the last minute for people 30 days before they close, get their experts as comfortable as they can, and then be able to have an extra 20 to 50% more. And that's really what's at stake.
Sure.
If you knew today that you could have an extra 20 to 50% at closing, right? You would just call us and get it going right now. That's what we want to encourage people to do.
What's the timeline? So from, hey, Brett, let's do this. Is it a week, a month, a quarter? How long does it take?
Yeah. So, we can typically set things up in, 30 days or less. Just depends on if the buyer has removed contingencies or not. Okay. So if you're under contract, we can still help you. The bigger the deal is, the more at stake you have other people that are trying to sell. The M&A attorneys, the buyer side, the complexities grow. Depending on how you own it, whether it's an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, there's some complexities there, but we can help with all of those.
What's the most ideal structure from
just a simple LLC that only owns the entity, right? So it's not an S Corp, it's not a C Corp, it's just the LLC, and it just owns that business or that piece of real estate, or at least your LLC only has that percentage of shares in the company. That's the simplest form, but we can do C Corps, S Corps, we can do all of them.
Well, I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit before, which is the bigger the deal, and then not even just big deals, but I would think, any deal and, say the 8 figures and above, if you're a financial advisor, money manager, whatever, my wealth management person for a, for a high net worth individual, and you've got the idea, not them, that probably doesn't make them look great, right? Like, how do you, because I got to believe you're going to get a lot of pushback. They're going to be trying to call bullshit just because it wasn't their idea.
Yeah, there's some of that sometimes, and they're also they're fearful that they're not going to manage the capital, right? So what we say is, look, if you have a great advisor, let's bring him on the team.
Right.
He can manage the capital. That's no problem. We're a trustee. Now, what we're really good is real estate investments, and so we balance it out. Stocks, bonds, mutual fund, securities, traditional financial advisor. I think you should really call him a traditional securities and stock financial advisor, and I think you should have a real estate investment advisor. Every good family office and team does. Right, they're two distinct, different focuses, and need to have a balance. So what we're really good at is real estate investments, right? And we're really good at finding great mobile home park, multifamily, industrial type of groups that have funds and real estate debt, and finding the best of the best there. So it's definitely it's a team aspect, right? You need a Draymond Green, you need a Steph Curry, you need a Steve Kerr. So we don't want to ever say no. We want to say yes, bring them in. That's fine if they're A players. Now, if they're not A players, then maybe we need to reassess that. That's up to the person to decide. Now, we believe we work with some of the best, financial professionals in the world, right? And we can bring them to the table. And your team that helped you get from 0 to $1 million, or $1 million to 10, or even 10 to 20 may not be the same that is going to take it from 20 million to 100 million, 100 million to $1 billion. And we've got to level up the team and build family offices. Is really what we're doing at the end of the day after people exit, is establishing a dream team to execute on the strategy. So it's a more complex question or answer, but yeah, generally we're open and we'll work with anybody.
Now, again, this just because I hadn't heard of it before doesn't really mean much. But I feel like I know enough people that are in real estate, though I'm not heavily in real estate, and probably should be. How mainstream is this? Like, if I talk to, 20 significant real estate developers, how many of them would have heard of this strategy?
Oh, maybe 1 out of 20 would have heard of it. They get it confused with the Delaware Statutory Trust a lot because it's called a DST. So our strategy is called a deferred sales trust. Okay. And so they've heard of installment sales. Everyone knows seller carryback. That's very common. A couple of just stats. Okay. So thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions so far, close to 30 years, billions and billions and billions of assets sold using it. And there's been about over 2.5 dozen audits. We've never had a change. Okay. And most of our audits have been in the state of California. We've had one in New Jersey. We've had
California is shocking.
yeah, right. And then federal audits. So we've had private letter rulings. We have third-party law firms. I mean, we've probably the most vetted capital gains tax deferral strategy you've never heard of. Okay. And so yeah, we've never had a single change. And so just to tell you how remarkable that is, like if you and I had our tax returns, they're going to find a receipt. They're going to find something that's off, and they're going to say, you probably owed a little bit more here, right? It's not going to be perfect. We've never had a single change on any of the audits. Now, we've also never been on a watch list.
Right.
We've never been on a dirty dozen. We've also never had a negative effect for a taxpayer. So we're batting 1,000 so far. Right. So that's what we say to them. It's like, hey, let me give you another one too as well. We have a gentleman we work with. He's a part of our inner circle. He manages some of the biggest wealth in the world. And he was approached with this strategy about 7 years ago. And he helped to build PIMCO from 80 billion to 1.2 trillion like 20 years ago. Well, so he managed some of the biggest wealth in the world. Well, he gets approached with this. He's like, he never heard of it. He's like, how? I haven't heard of this. I managed some of the biggest wealth in the world, right? You know, like, hey, take a look, go deeper. He went deeper. He went all the way down the due diligence. He had his whole legal team look at it, review it. And he did a 2-year due diligence on it, right?
Wow.
After 2 years, 2 conclusions. Number one, the creator of the structure, CBA tax experience telling you about, he's the smartest guy they've ever met. Number two, or one of them, like they meet some smart guys. Number two, they're all in. They're part of our inner circle, right? And so what we say is if it's good enough for one of the best in the business in the last 20, 30 years, is it good enough for me and David and who's ever listening? And their legal team, after 2 years of due diligence, again, back to the thing, a lot of people find us 30 days to go. And they're like, this is too good to be true. I was expecting to pay 20 or 30 or 50% in tax.
Right.
My M&A doesn't know about it, or my CPA doesn't know about it. Well, maybe it's too good to be true. And that emotional aspect there can sometimes stop people. Well, we want to say, well, what if someone's already done all of the work here and you can trust that he's the best in the world? We have those people. So
how do you get I would imagine, I would imagine if I were in your shoes, having 1,000, a 1,000 batting average, which, put Ted Williams to shame. Yeah. My biggest frustration would be, why don't more people know about this? So how are you getting the word out?
Yeah. So we're doing podcasts like this. We wrote our book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, right? And so we're focused. It was a bestseller. We have Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book, which is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
You probably ask, even like a Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank and say, what are the things that, people still don't know about that, you're one of the biggest brands and the names in the industry, but they still don't know, right? I think the best answer for it is there's 10,000 pages or so in the tax code, right? And then there's certain areas that you can go really deep in, and we expect everything to be Googleable or Chat GPTable, right? And maybe most things will become at this point. And so you have your legal team, your tax team, your financial advisor team. They all have these different stakes in it. In fact, this is a story that it still hurts when you lose deals, right? She was selling us like a $7 million mobile home park in California. 0 basis, is about to pay, I think, $3 million of tax. And the broker is like a friend of mine, and he's like, you've got to do this. You've got to look at this. You've got to look at it. And all of the things, and the calls went great, and all the things. And in the background, she had a financial advisor that she, this is in the Napa area of California, and they'd go out and get wine, and they're friends, and she talked her out of it. I'm like, that financial advisor can manage the money.
That's what I was saying before. Like, I bet these people are like, no, they're, it sounds.
I'd rather pay. And we were just like blown away. We're like, well, like you're just going to pay $3 million and you're going to go to the financial advisor at $4 million when the financial advisor could have had $7 million. Like, so I think that emotionally people have a team, and they have their tribe, and you can't blame them, right? If they say no when it's too late. Now, the goal is to get out into the podcast, to tell, I call it telling a better story. So really answer your question is you got to tell better stories.
Right.
I can try to convince you with logic all day long. I can give you all the stats, all of the IRS audits, all that stuff, but that's kind of a certain part of the brain. Persuasion really happens and minds change with story. It's the reason Jesus taught in parables and taught in story, right? I think it also helps us, like you said before, sometimes I can talk really fast. It helps us to slow down and be able to digest the information. So I told you the story of the top advisor who's one of the top at PIMCO and did 2 years of due diligence. And if it's good enough for him and his legal team, is it good enough for us? That's probably a better story than your CPA who just hasn't heard of it, right? Me just saying it, I might be the guy who was a real estate broker by trade, played basketball in college and, knows this part of the tax code, but that might not be the best story versus your CPA who's really, really, a brainiac tax smart. But if I can bring in our tax attorney and that, by the way, what we found is when you get the CPA with the CPA, this CPA and a tax attorney, he's a CPA and a tax attorney, and you get them together, guess what happens? A lot of the pressure kind of goes away. The CPA relaxes. They see it's legit, and they join us. So I don't want to make it like they don't. They do. They join us. They sign NDAs. They join us, and they send us referrals.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I'm asking this question for a very specific reason. My dad and my stepmom used to live in Manhattan, sold a very expensive piece of real estate, and they're doing a 1031. They moved to Chicago, and as I understand it, again, it was new to me. Actually, the first time I'd heard about it when they were telling me what they were doing was, I guess you can't live in the property for like 1 year or something like that, which seemed like such a weird, hurdle to, and they're 83 years old. They're both 83 years old. So it's like, and they're both in good health, but still, if you're, they're kind of halfway through their process, is it too late for them, or would they be able to do something like this? The ship has already sailed.
It all depends, but let me walk you through it, right? Yeah. So we have what's called the best 1031 exit plan, where we can save or rescue 1031 exchanges when you started out for 1031, and you can go into our strategy. So we have that. It's called the best 1031 exit plan. A. B, if they haven't quite sold the property yet, right, and they're still waiting to sell it, we can also set it up before close of escrow, right? So that's the key. We want to find out where the funds are at, and how it's going, and then find out what they're really trying to accomplish. Back to that whole piece of it. So those are really the key questions. So now, if you're selling a business, you're not 1031 eligible. If you're selling Bitcoin, that's not 1031 eligible. Yeah. So all of those need to be set up well, definitely prior to the close of escrow. But if you're selling investment real estate, yes, we can save a failed 1031. However, not every 1031 exchange company wants you to know about this, right? Because they're Blockbuster and we're Netflix. Right. Now, there are those that are like, hey, technology, advancement, Netflix, cool. And we have those set up where you can give you both options. We don't want to say no to the 1031. We want to say, well, maybe you do a partial 1031. Maybe you do a 50-50, right? We do bifractured 1031s, half and half. We diversify. We've had client $6 million exit out of Texas. He did a $2 million in South Carolina. He did a $1.5 million in Oklahoma City, and the rest of it went into the trust. So it's not just a one size fits all. It just depends on what we're trying to solve for.
Well, I got a few intros I want to make, not just to my dad and my stepmom, but I got a buddy I'm going to the Bitcoin conference with, who's got a real estate investment company that I don't think he knows anything about this, and I think he should.
And let me touch on a thing here too that is important to bring up. One of the other big challenges people overlook is what's called the death tax, or the estate tax is what it's also known as. Okay. And so that's
above a certain dollar threshold.
It is, yes. Yeah. So right now it's about 28 million married. Let's just define that. If you're a married couple, U.S. citizens, you get 28 million exempt. So if you're worth exactly 28 million, you died, there's no death tax. You get a stepped up basis, you're cool. Now in 2026, it's set to cut in half. Okay, 14 million married, 7 million single. Now, could they change that between now and the end of the year? They might. They might keep it where it's at, but this is the highest it's ever been. My point is, if you own Bitcoin, a business, real estate, and your net worth is basically above 30 million married or 15 million single, you've got a death tax problem, and the stepped up basis will not solve for it. Now, guess what? We have a solution. It's our 2.0 version of what I've been talking about. You can sell and eliminate the death tax. I'll give you kind of a show. There's a show called Yellowstone. In fact, my family and I were going to be flying to Yellowstone here, Montana.
I stayed in an Airbnb 5 miles down the road from where they filmed it.
Perfect. Okay.
So in middle of nowhere, Montana.
And you've seen the show, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So you got Beth, the daughter, who's the attorney, right? She's really smart. And you got Kevin Costner, the dad. And let's say the land is worth $1 billion. They never really say what it's worth, but let's say it's worth $1 billion. And they're like, Dad, they want the land. You got to sell the land. He's like, Beth, we're never selling the land. And she's like, but if you don't sell the land, Dad, they're going to kill you. And if they kill you, they're going to the debt tax is going to kick in and we can't afford it and they're going to get the land anyways. And he goes, we're not selling the land. He just keeps saying the same thing. And I go, Kevin, I got a solution for you.
Here's my phone number.
Here's your phone number. Use the DST 2.0. Let me save, and we can eliminate the debt tax. Now, it would have taken Kevin selling the land during his lifetime, by the way. But let's say he would have sold it for $1 billion, okay? It's forever outside of his taxable estate. We basically immediately eliminate $400 million of capital of estate tax.
Right.
Save the exemption amount, right? A little bit of 15, right? That's it. Like, and so this is a big piece of it. So as people are looking at these plans, you got to know what you're solving for. Like when I interview you on my podcast, you walk in and say, well, what problem are we solving for these companies, right? If you don't even know where you're aiming for, you don't even know what problem you're trying to solve for, how are you ever going to solve it?
Yep.
So you got to know capital gains tax. You got to know estate and debt tax. These are the two killers, right? I call it having a tax flow mindset. Not just cash flow. You also need debt flow mindset. Tax flow is cap gains tax. It's income tax. It's death tax. Okay. These are, each state has different tax, right? So how can we maximize the efficiency of your tax flow game, right? That's what we're talking about here.
Got it. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, right? I mean, especially when you're talking about 30 million or above, like that's a pretty small slice of society, right? That has that. But, that's where the money is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so maybe talk a little bit about, you did talk a little bit about it, but how is crypto and smart contracts and AI, impacting what you guys are doing?
Good question. I think the awareness of what's available and what's possible, and it helps to organize and apply the information, right? I might be able to read a blog or watch a podcast, but I can now in Chat GPT, right, or just about anything, talk to it and type into what I want it to solve for and help to build out these plans, whether it be a business plan, a tax flow plan, be budgets, strategic plans. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing it's doing. I think smart contracts as well. What we do is customize. It's not a template. It's like 100 different or 500 different ways to skin the cat kind of thing. So we're a ways away, I think, before, it would be something like maybe like a living trust type of thing where you can AI a living trust planning, where it's pretty templated. If that makes sense?
No, it does. I'm curious because it makes, especially if you're dealing with estate taxes and you're talking about, that kind of, whether it's 15 or 30, whatever ends up happening with the tax code. But what about for people that are earlier in their, in their life cycle, right? They're in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. Are there things they should be thinking about that they should be doing that are not obvious that sort of play in the field that you're in?
So number one goes back to what I said in the beginning. They're truly passive income number. I think too many people, they get diluted results because they have diluted focus. They think they need 7 different income streams, right? And really, I think eventually you want to diversify into 7 different income streams, but really what you need is one massive income stream that is going to help you compound to a point where you get your truly passive income number, and then you diversify into 7. So it's just doing it in the right order. So I would say, no matter what age you are, what is your truly passive income number? Right. Well, again, what are you aiming for? Is it 10,000 a month? Is it 20, 30, 40, 50? Right. Guess what? Ours right now for my wife and I and our family, for where we're at, it's about 30,000 a month.
Right.
I have a plan to get there within 24 months. Right. And I have a clear amount, a clear investment, consistency of and durability of cash flow. And if we just do these steps, which is basically 500,000 per year for the next next 2 years, right? We're going to be there.
Right.
We're going to be there. I'm sorry, next 4 years, we're going to be there, right? So each year, we've already done once, really next 3 years, we're going to be there. And now that unlocks not having to trade time, talent, treasure. Then I can start to look at more ways to give and different things to do. But if you don't have that, it's like all the other stuff kind of doesn't really matter. I call it the big domino effect. If I can knock over this big domino of truly passive income within the next 3.5 years, all of the rest of it becomes irrelevant or it solves itself. So that's what I would say for those looking to retire, those looking to build wealth. Get crystal clear on that truly passive income number. Get a team in place that can help you to execute it and make sure that the investments are with something that like, and trust, that you can sleep well at night. one of the biggest mistakes we see is those that leave a business or real estate where they made all of their millions or all of their wealth, and they can invest it into the stock market, and they think they're diversifying. In some ways they are, but they're not able to sleep well at night. They don't like the volatility. They don't like the political part of it. They don't like the worldview of part of it. And it's Wall Street. It's just not they're swimming out of water. So in fact, Tony Robbins is writing a book, may have already come out, and he talks about really we've been, I think, misled in some ways that alternative investments are real estate and private equity, right? It's actually the opposite. Alternative is really stocks, in my view, and I think Tony's now too. Stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. That's really should be the alternatives.
Right.
Okay. And he had a stat. If you would invest in private equity for the last 35 years, side by side with the stock market's averaged 9.4%. Private equity, I think 14.5%.
Wow.
He says that difference every single year is absolutely massive over the years of 35 years. Okay. And so that's the other thing too. Ask yourself, where do you feel is you can sleep well at night? And so for us, it's real estate debt right now. Okay. And then when the prices drop, and we've seen now we got a deal at 68,000 per unit, 375 units, multifamily, one of the busiest growing states in America, value add deal. We bought that one about 3 months ago. Well, 2.5, 3 years ago, we were getting out of equity because the prices were through the roof. This is where we use our strategy to sell high and then get into stuff where we can ride the wave in a good way, real estate debt, and then we buy back when so it's basically that mechanism there. We focus on real estate equity, multifamily, mobile home park, industrial, real estate debt. Right now, we're mostly in real estate debt because of the double-digit returns and the durability of the cash flow. And we're picking off these foreclosing and these deals that are distressed. Is that making sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, real estate's, your bread and butter from an investment strategy. How big a role, does crypto play in your thinking about strategies? And I'm curious how familiar you are with what Michael Saylor and MicroStrategies is doing with because they've sort of created their own financial instruments of sorts. I'm just curious how that sort of plays into everything.
So we diversify with smaller percentages into Bitcoin, into MicroStrategies, Ethereum. I've done some mining with the kids. Okay, we had some rigs back in California. We had some cheap energy. So I'm learning a lot from my clients. So my approach to if you're going to build wealth, and you're going to go outside your lane, you've got to have somebody not only that you know, like, and trust, but has had massive success in that arena, and then you can build small amounts with that, right? So I believe in the future of Bitcoin. I believe that it's going to be, and it is, the best, if not the best investment, one of top with real estate. Real estate's getting crushed right now, so big component of Bitcoin, and then I would say that. So I'm putting money in there. Now, I like to, let me back up another way. I like to get truly passive income through durable stuff and then just pour that into like a Bitcoin or a Bitcoin ETF. That's one strategy that is pretty solid too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I did amaze. I have some friends, that had, 8 and 9 figure exits, their personal proceeds in the last few years, and they have zero money in crypto. And I'm just like, that's crazy to me. It's just, especially when you have political uncertainty, you're effectively your own bank, right? It's like, and I'm not saying you should I'm way more aggressive than most because I understand it well. But even if you don't understand it well, not having something like 5 or 10% of your liquid net worth in Bitcoin, when you have tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, just seems crazy because you can send it anywhere in the world. I made a $100,000 investment the other day. I think I paid 56 cents, for my transaction.
Yeah. I'm seeing the Bitcoin percentages go from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15. People are talking 25% now. Allocation percentages, right? But again, to me, none of that stuff is as important until you get your truly passive income coming in. So get that 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000, whatever per month is, whatever that number is, focus like a laser there. And then sure, like the allocations and those other things, that can come, right? I think that makes
sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, so, going back to by the way, this is all really, really fascinating stuff. I know I'm going to personally dig in on this stuff deeper because I find it so interesting and I could see some of this in my future. going back to the personal a little bit, I'm curious, you're still relatively young. You got a long career ahead of you still, if you want one, obviously. Where do you see yourself in, 5, 10, 20 years?
Yeah. So first thing is 1,000 extraordinary days and 100 unique locations with my kids before they're 18. So we're
Okay.
on this journey. My wife and I married close to 16 years. God's been really good to us with our children and our marriage. In fact, we're taking all of the month of June. We'll be in California for a family reunion and wedding. We'll be in Montana and Yellowstone. Maybe I can see that. I can see the Beth and Kevin
I'll make an
there.
intro to those Airbnb
Yeah,
folks.
yeah, and then we'll be in South Dakota Spearfish for some friends and then we'll be
You can
in
get your nomad residency.
yeah, you're right, maybe right there, and then we'll be in North Carolina, and so basically 30 days of extraordinary adventures and all of this, and so that's the first thing. So we want to make sure we nail that. The beauty of being an entrepreneur and being able to be a mobile, I can work just from about anywhere, right? Which with the internet connection and some power, right? So that's number one. Number two, I love coaching. I love coaching basketball. I want to coach my kids. I do see at some point coaching high school, maybe college basketball. It's one of my passions that I have. Number three, building an organization where we can give. For personally, my wife and I give over. Our goal is to get to 90% giveaway, right? So live off the 10 or 10x our giving from our spending. Those are some of the kind of more personal goals. We want to. We exist to unlock capital gains to multiply freedom and impact for our company. So, the billion is by end of 2027 under management, right? And then scaling up from there with world-class leaders even more. We're bringing in some amazing leaders even right now. So it's company growth, it's family growth, it's our faith and be able to give back, right? So one of our big goals is do 1,000 wells in Uganda. As part of the Uganda community with the local church and a local pastor who's already put in over 54 wells and has a school for orphans of 700 kids. In fact, I took the whole family there about 2 months ago with one of my team members who helped to build the project about 10 years ago. So these are some specific, narrowing in on like big impact, building into leaders for giving and making a difference. So those are just a few that come to mind. And hopefully maybe my jujitsu will be maybe a blue or purple belt or something. I'm a white belt right now. So
now, does your wife do jujitsu
not
as
yet.
well?
We're
Just your
trying to
kids?
talk her into it, just the
Right.
kids. And so we're trying to get her to get going on it.
I had my wife do it. Went back when I was at Coin Flip. We actually there was a bunch of guys who worked there who were black belts, some brown belts and some blue belts, and so we had our own gym and we basically roll, which is kind of fun because my problem was when I would roll in a regular gym. And again, I tap immediately. Like it's not
Yeah.
about my ego at all.
Yeah.
But I would, when you're rolling with someone who's less experienced and don't have good control, I'm
Yeah.
always getting my elbows hyperextended. I'm like, I'm injured all the time.
Yeah.
Kind of annoying. But when I did it with people I worked with, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
What about with 5 children? How do you think about, sort of how do you make them into leaders? How do you figure out how much suffering to allow them to experience? Because, most parents knee jerk is you don't want them to experience any suffering, but that's not good. How do you think about those things?
Good question. So first of all, we homeschool. We did this before homeschool was like all the rage, if you will.
Right.
My wife, her focus and her passion, her gifts, her skill set, it was child development, and basically building extraordinary kids. And she did this before we were married, but without kids, with other people's kids, right? And she ran before and after school program for kids. She studied child development. So we got married and she was like, well, I can go back and work with other people's kids or I can just work with our kids. I'm like, oh, just work with our kids,
Yeah.
So that's been her focus. So I think one, it's making sure that you're speaking life of what you believe the Lord has given them certain gifts. Okay. And so as an example, we're really practical about this. There's certain questions I ask my kids. I try to ask them about every day. And I'll tell you the series of questions. Okay. And it's designed to speak life and their strengths into their souls, right? Into their hearts, into their minds. And so it's, hey, do you know that your mom and dad love you forever, right? And they go, yeah, yes, yeah, okay, great. But who loves you the most? And they say Jesus, because we can never love more than Jesus. We want to know that. Also because we're going to let him down at some point, right? And then the next question I ask him is, and what does he want you to do? And they say, do good. By the way, do you know if you ask a question, it's 18 times more effective than saying the statement?
I did not.
Yeah, it's a study, right? And so what I learned at a young age, or as a parent, is to not make statements or commands, is to ask questions, okay, as best I can, right? And so when I ask these questions, it's a series of getting into their hearts and their minds. So what does he want you to do? Good. And I say, and what do we hate? And they say sin. I say, yes, we hate sin. And I said, and what is how smart did God make you? And they go, so smart. I go, how strong? And we have them to watch that movie, and in that movie is Remember the Titans. And they go, how strong? He goes, too strong, right? And they go, too strong. I go, yeah, too strong. And this is from the age of like 3 years old. And I say, okay. And I say, and my daughters, how beautiful did God make you? And they go, so beautiful. I go, yes, so beautiful. My son, I told him, how handsome did he make you? He goes, so handsome. All right. And then I keep going. And I say, and what did he make you? And now I've given them each what I believe is the Lord has given them a gift. And so my oldest daughter, Ava, the first gift was an encouraging, and I add, and I think you're going to like this for your new book coming out, humble servant leader. So they're all the humble servant leader. That's who they are. You're a humble servant leader, all of you, but you're the bold, humble servant leader. So who did he make you? Bold, humble servant leader. And my second daughter, Evelyn, I said, Evie, what did he make you? The compassionate, humble servant leader. She has a very high EQ. She can connect with people in a really dynamic way, introverted, but incredible. Third born, she's like CEO, take over the world, right? What do you make you? Her name's Emily, the bold, humble servant leader, okay? Fourth born, Savannah. Now, Savannah, you're never going to miss her. She's going to, I mean, you can't miss her. She's going to come in. She's a tornado, right? She's extrovert, your best friend. She's going to connect and just bring joy into the room immediately. She's going to change the energy of the room. He made her the joyful, humble servant leader. So she says the joyful, humble servant leader. Our fifth born, Strive, I think I've been pretty good with the girls. I had 4 girls in a row and I had a baby boy. So the fifth born, Strive, I'm still trying to figure him out. Honestly, it's interesting. And right now he's the strong, humble servant leader. He's very physical, but also he's strong-willed. He's strong competitor. He's driven. So he's a strong, humble servant leader. So I say those things. They all answer those questions.
Every day?
About every day. Just about every day since they're about 3, each of them 3.
Wow.
And then I finish with a couple last ones. And I say, what's, so I go through this question. Let me get my train of thought on this one. So I say, the last question I say, how do we love and obey the Lord? With all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, with all our strength. And then we sing together. I sing those 4 things from all our heart, all our soul, our mind, our strength. And so this has been ingrained in them for a very, very young age. So, and then we pray, and I pray this over them. So, and then I'll pray it over them. And so whenever we're going to bed, I ask those series of questions. We're in the car, going back from jujitsu, I ask the series of questions. So over and over and over again at dinner, anytime, like we have a chance to go through this. And so it's ingrained in them. They'll answer every single one of them. So that's one way we do it.
Wow. So I'm so dazzled, quite frankly, by how thoughtful and intentional both you and your wife are. Where did that come from? I mean, was it maybe because of some of the upheaval in your childhood that you wanted to have? Like, was you and your wife came up with this plan together? Like, it's very interesting. I haven't heard of anyone being quite as thoughtful about it as you've been.
When I pray, I ask the Lord to, make me what He wants me to be. Like He has to give me the love to love my wife. He has to give me the love to love my children. Like I ask Him to help me to uniquely love each of them the way that He wants me to love them. Right? The Bible says to lay down your life for your wife. So it's like, the Lord, help me to lay down my life for Melanie. Something I pray every day or every chance I can. So I just remember praying. I don't even know how it really came to me. And it wasn't like it all came to me all in order. I just began. My mom would always tell me she loves me. My wife growing up, they never really verbally said it. Like they kind of knew it, but they never verbally said it. For us, we always said it. Hey, my mom would say, I love you. I love you. My brother, cousins, like we're very open and like we love each other, right? We just say it. We hug each other, like very physical touch. Like that was all very normal. So I remember at a very young age with the kids, just telling them, we love you forever. Just love you, love you, love you. And I remember my wife, Melanie, saying, wow, I really like that we say that. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's what it is, right? And she told me that part. So that was the first, part of it. And then it just kind of progressed into each of them. And so I don't really know, honestly, like I would just say the Lord gave me wisdom to do it, and I just kept building on it. And then I'm like, I think this feels great. Let's just keep doing it. So it's the best way I got on that.
So I was Jewish on my father's side,
Yeah.
I'm a Catholic Italian on my mom's side,
Mm-hmm.
and I made the financial decision at 11 and a half that I wanted to get bar mitzvahed because
Okay.
I had one of my close friends came from a much more affluent family than I did.
Yeah.
It told me he was going to get $100,000 when he turned 13. I'm like, what?
Oh.
He's like, oh yeah. He's like, when you become 13, you're the rabbi for the day when you have your bar mitzvah. They throw you a huge party and everyone gives you money. I was like, really?
Yeah.
So I come home like, Mom, Dad, I want to get in touch with my Jewish roots.
Yeah.
I started going to Hebrew school at 11 and a half. So I only made $3,000. Okay. Still to a 13-year-old, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I've been to church. I've been, kind of the Easter and midnight mass type of Catholic or Christian, and very light, on the Judaism side as well. And I consider myself, not in small part, probably due to my near-death experience, if you will, when I was told I was going to be dead in 6 months, but I consider myself a very spiritual person, and faith has eluded me. The thing that's interesting is that life keeps putting person after person after person in my path that's devoutly religious. The podcasting studio I use in Miami, I invested in his business. He's a close personal friend of mine now, and I do fellowship most Sundays. He's extremely religious, and he's gave me a Bible, and he gives me things to read, and I do. But here's my struggle. With religion, and maybe you can be helpful, maybe you can't.
Yeah.
I can't reconcile these three things: that God is omnipotent, that God created all things, and yet we're responsible for the decisions he knew we would make. I can't reconcile it because not only that, but let's say I was on let's just use the binary option that, hey, when this person was born, she's me, when this person was born, he's going to end up, and he's going to make whatever decision he's going to make that will land him in hell for eternity. It's not even possible for me to make different decisions, even if I have free will, because if I don't make those decisions that would land me in hell, it would invalidate God's omnipotence. So I don't know how to reconcile, just from a logic standpoint, which is maybe a stupid basis, but I can't from a logical standpoint say, well, if God's omnipotent, he knows every choice we're going to make and the outcome of every choice we're going to make, and he created us all, how is it then our fault that we made the choices he knew we would make when he made us? I don't know how to reconcile it.
Yeah, so make sure I got it. So it sounds like God all-knowing, right, all-powerful, but yet gives us free will.
Well, no, forget about the free will. But so he's all-knowing, so he knows absolutely knows the outcome of everything.
Right.
He knows the end point, and he created all things.
Right.
So if he created all of us, knowing every decision we were going to make before we made it, and we can't. It's not, even if we have free will, we couldn't exercise that free will in a way that would change the outcome, or it would invalidate his omnipotence. So I can't reconcile. Well, then you knew when you created me I was going to go to hell. So, and you made me in such a way that the choices I would make, even if I have free will, that the exercising of the free will you knew in advance was going to land me in hell, that you can't even intervene in a way, because if you were to intervene in some way, that would invalidate your omnipotence. So I don't know how to reconcile it.
I have to think that one. Yeah, I haven't quite heard it put that way before. So that's it's certainly a good question. It feels like a little bit of a conundrum, right?
I had a 2-hour debate with Grok about it.
Oh, and what did Grok say?
I turned Grok into an atheist. It's not the outcome I wanted.
Yeah, I think the first thing you think is like God's outside of time is the first thing that comes to my mind. God's outside of our what we know as reality, right? And just because God knows what's going to happen doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have an opportunity to accept the gift of forgiveness, right? What Jesus did for us on the cross, and that gift and what he did is so powerful, more powerful than anything else that we could ever.
God would know in advance, when even before he created us, whether we would accept that gift or not.
Yeah, again, outside of time and our how we know reality, but I think that's where God's not only all-knowing, but he's timeless, right? So it's a different reality from what we can see and touch and feel, right? So in other words, I think that's somehow what us not understanding what that even how to get outside of time, like, or even like what does that even mean? Okay, I think that's the gap between what you're saying and you're still in the physical, right? You're still in the physical. So that's, to me, that would be the gap to explore. It's like, hey,
Okay.
how do I reconcile that I don't even understand what timeless means, what that even can mean? How can that even be possible that something is timeless,
But I don't.
immaterial, and outside of like our reality?
So I can at least in an abstract understand that something could be timeless, that because then you have the argument, well, what existed before God, who created God? Was there a creator of the
Right.
creator? Like I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but even if God is timeless and I can't fully understand it, which I certainly can't, it still doesn't invalidate my base premise as it's been explained to me by people that are devoutly religious and fairly well read when it
Mhm.
comes to the Bible. They're telling me, yes, God is the creator of all things. Yes, God is omnipotent and he knows the outcome of all things. So, well, if he created us, and when he created us, whether he's timeless or not, we're not
Right.
timeless.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well,
Now,
we
I guess we might timeless for
we are
eternity,
eternal. Yeah. Eternal.
but even then, right? So it's like the punishment for you again. If you created me in such a way that the exercising of my free will for the creation you made, right? Like the way you're raising your children, like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say these kids are probably going to turn out pretty darn good, right? Because of how you're raising them,
Yeah.
right? So if God created me in such a way that, I had bad, DNA, bad whatever, that he knows I'm going to make bad choices and I'm going to end up in hell. Not am I just going to end up in hell, I'm going to end up in hell for eternity. And he made me in a way knowing that was the outcome, and there's no possible other outcome but that one. That's my, at least the way it's written as I read it in the Bible, that's my punishment.
Yeah.
Seems arbitrary to me.
So I think part of the premise that I would explore if I'm in your shoes is when you say he made me that way. Well, he actually made Adam and Eve pure and not that way.
Okay.
Adam and Eve sinned, and that
Right.
sin has been passed down through generations. Kind of like my dad. Like my dad's sins or women and
I get that.
alcohol. Yeah. And so sin, God didn't make sin, right?
Right.
God doesn't. He can't.
But wouldn't he have known in advance that Adam and Eve would have eaten the apple? He would have known that when he created them.
So back to that again. So then would you say that, and by the way, if he is all powerful, all knowing, and all loving, right? And he has the ability to decide, make a decision and give them an opportunity to love him, right? And had he not given that opportunity to take the apple and sin, right? That we're just robots, right? We don't even have a chance to truly love, right? So that would be my best explanation of why he would give people the opportunity to do that. So regardless if they were going to do it or not, the only way he could have love between human beings, we're made in his image, is to give us the choice to make a decision, right? A decision to have a relationship or not. And so for them, they could choose to have the apple, or they can stay in a pure relationship with him. But God, with his great mercy, says, I'm not going to just wipe everybody out. I'm not going to just start over. Although with Adam, with Noah,
and Sodom and Gomorrah,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, not completely, right? I mean, he gave a little bit of it, right? So I would say it shows his grace, it shows his mercy that he even allows time to go so many thousands of years, so that we could be born, so we could be sitting here right now. We have an opportunity to say, okay, Lord, I know I've sinned. I don't know all the answers to all the questions, but I'm going to put my trust into Jesus, that he died on the cross for my sins, and that somehow, some way, what he did counted for me. Not for anybody else, not for all the other things, but somehow what he did counted for me.
Right.
And I'm not going to have all the answers. But by the way, if you're someone who's doubting and skeptical, guess what? So we're all the disciples.
Right.
You're in good company. So have I been, right? So have I. So it's not as if something's new. I mean, you have Peter, who saw Jesus do all the miracles, and then he denies him 3 times. And not only that, after Jesus rises from the dead, at a certain point, Peter goes back and starts fishing again.
Right.
Right? And you have doubting Thomas, who says, I won't believe until I see all these things, right? You keep going, all the people, right?
Right.
You have Paul.
And even Job, right?
Yeah, you have Job. Yeah, so it's not I don't think that's the thing to stop you from having faith, right? Like his grace, his love, his work on the cross is greater than the sum total of all of the doubts that we could ever have.
So the challenge I have is like, so again, then maybe this is a flaw of me, a flaw of mine. So faith is not enough for me. I don't need to have certainty, but I need to have belief, and belief needs a basis,
Mhm.
right? Because if it's just faith, every religion can make the faith argument, right?
Pause, but what is their salvation for sin? So they can believe in a certain thing
Right.
like nirvana, or they can believe in a certain thing like like even like LDS, they believe in Joseph Smith and all these things, right?
Right.
Like so who has in any faith besides Jesus Christ said, I'm
Mhm.
the Son of God and I came from heaven to rescue us to back to heaven. Everything else is like, you're here and let's have faith and believe to work our way to heaven. We can never work our way to heaven. It's there's really 4 pictures of God. The 3 of them are wrong, one's right. One picture is it's this huge wall. I can never get on the other side. God's way over there. I'm way over here. There's no way I can ever get to him, right? Second one is, man, it's a staircase. If I just work hard enough and do enough things and I'm better than other people or better than my best self, I can get my way to God. You're never going to get to God. You're building the wrong ladder on the wrong wall. The other one is like garbage. I have too much garbage in my past. There's no way God's can forgive me my sins. And the last one is a door, and that's the only right one. God knocks on the door of our hearts, and he says, hey, if you open up, I'll come in. If you follow me, right? Just follow me. Take the next step of following me. He doesn't say you have to believe everything right now before you follow me. He said, hey, just come follow me. Jesus says, just come follow me. He says to the disciples, hey, just come
What does
follow
that
me.
mean to come follow?
So in Jesus' staff, it's basically walking in his footsteps. They say walk in the footsteps in the dust of Jesus. Like if you were his disciple back in the 2,000 plus years ago, you would be mentored and discipled in the way of in his Jewish rabbi, right? Or a carpenter before he became full-time ministry, right? So how are you mentored? How do you learn from the people you learn from, right? You walked in their footsteps. You're in the meetings with them. For that, it's prayer. It's the Bible.
Right.
It's doing as He would have you to do, right? And that's where God says the Holy Spirit comes inside and changes your heart. So part of it is for me how I've come to believe it's back to the forgiveness piece, right? It wasn't like something that I was like, oh, I'm just be a good person. I'm going to forgive my dad.
Well,
It was God give me that gift and give me breaking. It's helping to see on the other side, if that makes sense. It's a spiritual changing transformation of a heart.
From the people I've talked to that are devoutly religious like
Yeah.
yourself, they all tell me a story like the one you talk about with your
Mhm.
dad and
Yeah.
forgiving your dad.
Yeah.
They all have a story something like that.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
had
What's miraculous? Yeah.
something that occurred.
Yeah.
And again, I I'm completely open to it.
Yeah.
I it seems like every person I am connecting with,
Yeah.
when I was doing some podcasts when I was out in Scottsdale, part of what got me to, part of what persuaded me to decide to move out there, I had this guy on my podcast. We hit it off. He had me on his podcast, and he invited me to his Bible study. I went 2 of the 3, 2 of the 3 because one of them I had missed, but I did 2 of the 3 that I was there. And I liked the guys I met, and again, I liked all of it. So I'm totally open to it, and they all tell me the same story. But and I remember actually when I was in Montana,
Yeah.
I hit it off. My wife and I became friendly with the Airbnb hosts.
Mhm.
They're very religious.
Mhm.
I said, "Hey, would you mind if we came to church with you?" So we went to their church,
Awesome.
and I got baptized. I'd
Oh,
never been baptized,
praise
so I
God.
get baptized I did it because I'm like, I want to see if I feel something.
Okay.
Right? My heart is open, and and so far, I haven't felt what's been described to me by
Okay.
everybody else,
Okay.
and I'm like, what's God waiting for?
Okay. All right.
I'm waiting. I'm ready.
Okay.
And I don't know. Maybe I'm just impatient.
You know what comes to mind? The story of Abraham bringing his son Isaac to the altar.
Okay, I know that. I know that
And
story.
part of what's so I think challenging to the faith and what God has for each of us, and it's unique. His love for you is unique to you that it is for me. His work he has for you is unique to you than it has for me. Like it's so personal, okay? And it's not what anyone else. It's his love is unbelievable, unique to you, okay? So Abraham, part of his love was like, hey, take your only son Isaac, march him up the mountain, put him on the altar, and sacrifice him. Like, I mean, could you imagine your
By
daughter,
today's standards,
my
you'd say
kid?
he's insane.
Yeah,
Hey, I heard a
Yeah.
voice, and the voice said, "Take your kid and murder
yeah.
him."
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I mean, like, just think about this, that whole concept, and then of
Right.
course he saves it, and he provides the ram, and the ram is what? It's a male lamb, Obviously this is a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, right? Coming to be the sacrifice for the sins of the whole world, right? So this whole thing, and by the way, Isaac himself too also gets on the altar. Isaac was probably 18 years old, they think, most scholars think.
Okay.
Isaac asks his dad, he's carrying up all the wood, like, Dad, where's the lamb? And he says, God will provide the sacrifice. And he knows he's bringing him up, and Isaac has to willingly get on the altar. So sometimes, I don't know what it is for each of us. I know for me, part of my altar moment was about 2.5 years ago with my business, an old business partner that I was technically a partner, just worked with him. It wasn't like a partner, but the God said, you're going to put that on the altar and either it's going to burn, or is that your idol? Is that the thing that's consuming your heart and your soul, right? And it's an opportunity for me to grow and be like, trust the Lord. Right. So for some of us, that's sometimes might be, and the feelings may or may not come because of that, just like blessing may or may not come because of that, but it's unique to you. And he's not one to, I think, make it a cookie cutter response of just,
I will say the most useful conversations I've had about faith are like this, where everyone, and the useful conversations are that they say the same thing, that their faith is very unique. Yeah. It's not cookie cutter.
Because it's a relationship. I think changing the words from religious,
right?
They're very religious, to I have a relationship with Jesus.
Right.
It's different than my mom's faith of Catholic church growing up and going to mass. And I'd go to Catholic school as a young kid, and we kind of do the communion and the thing and the Hail Mary and you're like, it's very rigid and religious versus like a relationship. Like you have a relationship with your daughter. I have a relationship with my daughters and my son and my, like this is a relationship. Who made relationships? God.
Right.
It's not a, and by the way, who are the people that Jesus was most upset with? He was upset with the religious Pharisees that were the political elites.
Right.
They were doing what? They were forcing the systems of man on people. And Jesus comes in and he flips over the tables and he's like, you guys are making my home, my house, a den of robbers. You're basically making it for your own power and your own influence and your own wealth. And it's like, no, this is where my people reside with me. Right. He is relationship, right? Not religious, right? That's where every, in the Christian church, when they've gone sideways and the stuff, it's because they did this man-made stuff and they said, you got to do it our man-made way. And you're like, no, just follow in the footsteps of Jesus. So there's some cool books. There's one that's, I think you should read. And it's basically about talking about practicing the Sabbath and listening and praying. And it's, what's it called? Oh gosh, I forget what it's called, but I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And I read it, and that helped me on, Friday at 7 p.m. to Saturday at 7 p.m. We practice Sabbath with the family. No screens, just, we can read books, we can do family time, we can go to the pool, we can do that, you can go to the park, but we're reading or praying together, we're relaxing, we're basically taking work off and taking screens off, right? So that's a place to help to quiet the heart and the soul. And maybe that's a good step to see if you can feel things when you quiet it, your heart and your mind, right? And a form of meditation, right? That kind of thing.
Well, I appreciate you you giving me real honestly, thank you. I really do appreciate it. This has been helpful. And I'd love to read that book.
Can I pray for you?
Absolutely.
All right, you ready? Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for the opportunity to be with David today and to spend some time. Lord, the last couple hours have been a real blessing to me, and I believe for him as well. And I just pray, Lord, that you would open both of our hearts, Lord, for anything that we have in our past that could hold us back from you or from loving our families, Lord, and doing the good work you've called us to do. Lord, I pray that if there's anything that you could show to David or me is your love for us, and the relationship you want to have for us. And I just pray a blessing upon David, his family, his daughter, his work, everything he's doing, his book that's coming out, these podcasts, may it go out and just help and bless a lot of people. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, Brett, I got to say, this has been such an interesting journey today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Where can people find you and where your company is changing the world for everybody?
Yeah. So you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can find me by going to brettswarts.com, all my social media, all the different things. And it'll link to my book, my podcast. I have the podcast, Build It to Billions, so you give more of all of it away. We have the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. We also have the YouTube channels. So that's a ton there. And if you have like a big exit coming up, you want to check out the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. And it's the ideal, we call it the ideal wealth plan for unlocking, or it's for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling assets of any kind for yourself, for your clients. Again, Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. We have Tyler McBroom, Tony Robbins, CPA in the book. Pretty cool. But yeah, all of that is capitalgainstaxers.com or brettswarts.com.
Brett, thanks so much for your time. Pleasure.